Did everybody get an agenda? I know he sent it out, but it was today. We'll start with a roll call, right here with Ivan.
Ivan Bellevaux.
Joe Sproul.
Lisa Jukes.
Richard Fletcher.
Brian Lewis.
Diane McCarthy.
Lee Sperry.
Brian Fournier.
David Pierce, Selectman's Rep.
Ruth Gage.
Peter Georgantis. Guy Karen, and you're in for Scott, and Phil Kendall will not be here tonight. So we're still missing a couple other people, right? So they come, they come. So, first thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes from last meeting. Got a motion?
Move to approve the minutes.
Seconded by
Second.
Lee Sperry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
One abstention. Okay. Public comment? We got a lot of public out there today. Moving right along, we'll go to old business. Ivan, you had a little meeting with the high school,
Yes.
and hopefully you all got a copy of that.
Does anyone need a copy?
Yes, I didn't get one.
Did you get a copy?
Yeah, Elizabeth and I met with Frank and Kim.
I'll take a hard copy. I got it in here.
Pass that over.
Sure. Thanks.
Is that extra?
There's some more
See
here.
what I wrote?
Go ahead, Ivan.
Working on it.
The black part were the questions. You'd seen the questions before in terms of what was forwarded. We met on June 1st, and the answers are in blue, in bullet form. And what will specifically be the impact of the default budget. There was a reduction in force at 2 teachers, removed 100,000 in books having to do with the math curriculum, or change there, if I'm correct. And there's not, the parking lot is not gonna be redone. So that was how the default budget was, will be met. Any questions on that?
Quick question I have, if anybody have a question? Were those reduction in teachers or not add-ons? Do you know?
It was called a reduction in force.
Okay.
So that,
Go ahead.
that doesn't really, is, were they adding teachers or were they
It was a reduced.
reduction in force, so, okay.
Go on, I'm sorry.
And then question number 2 had to do with the administrative structure. And just a little editorial on my part, I had a class reunion, and our class, high school, we thought we were a large class with 280 students. And then when I got to Goffstown High and realized it was 1,200, I sort of went, wow, that's large. So that's reality sort of hit. 1,200 students is a lot to manage, and I think, as I shared before, it's really done impressively, so. And to-
Excuse me, the graduating class you're talking about? Was
No,
that-
no, no, there's 1,200,
Oh,
no, no,
okay,
I'm sorry.
okay.
Oh,
I thought-
yeah, I
school.
hear what you're saying, I hear what you're saying, yeah. Yeah, oh, that's
I
right.
thought that sounded
Yeah, I
kind of
didn't
large.
quite say that right, did I?
Boston.
Yeah, there were other, okay. I didn't, yeah,
So
that's
the average
not,
class size is, we're gonna say is 300, right?
what is the height, what is the senior graduating class size? Do you know?
Off the cuff, I don't know. It's like 282.
Really? About the same,
Don't
okay.
quote me.
All right. Order, okay. Anyway, Dean of Students, special ed facilitator for something over 200 special ed students out of 1,200 total. An assistant principal, curriculum coordinator, there's 90 teachers. A guidance coordinator for 5 guidance counselors, or about 250 students per counselor. And an athletic director supervising, there's about, coordinating about 25 sports, 500 student participants.
Any questions? Go ahead, Brian.
I'm just, it was hard to follow when I was reading through it earlier, but you had said, how does this compare to the state suggested minimum? Is that what the 5 and 250 is? It doesn't, I don't feel like I have an answer on that.
Yeah. Yeah, the state guideline is no more than 300 students per counselor,
Okay.
so it meets quote-unquote state guidelines. Three, what is the current situation with nursing staff? And the move will be to 2 nurses rather than a nurse and an EMT. And I guess, and my understanding is this has to do with EMTs prescribing medicines. They can't do it, a nurse can, so the school has to dispense a lot of the medicines that the kids are on. And EMTs are quote-unquote not certified or qualified. I didn't go into too much detail on that. I understand there's some different opinions on that, but that was the explanation. Maintenance has taken a big hit. Goffstown High School underwent a pretty extensive remodeling. What about the maintenance issues at the school? Are there any big things on the horizon? So the maintenance staff is 3 to 4 people during the day, 4 to 6 in the evenings. There's a support staff of 1 technician and 1 library person and 6.5 secretaries. Any questions on that?
Well, the question I had when I read that, to be honest with you, is you asked about maintenance staff, and then we went into
Yeah,
technicians and secretaries. So it almost looks like you're saying there's 6.5 secretaries for the maintenance staff, which I don't think that,
no,
that's what you were trying to.
No, the maintenance of the people, to use an expression, pushing the brooms and mops. And there's other people needed to maintain the school, so yeah, that's, you
Those
get,
were
you get
estimates,
extra
too.
information for free.
Those were estimates too. They didn't have the exact numbers. They were kind
Yeah.
of doing it off the top of their head.
Yeah.
So those were ballpark figures.
A voice out of the,
Yes, I know, I just show up.
Just walks in here like nothing at all.
Sorry.
Go right ahead, Ivan.
and the last question, just talked about, the SAU presented data to the town, shows the Goffstown average cost per pupil has essentially doubled. And the question was, is this also representative of Goffstown High School? To what can these costs be attributed? Do you see this trend continuing? What possible things can be done to change that trend? So the intent of the question was to focus on costs, and of course, out of that, does everyone know, is familiar with or remember the cost per student data? If anyone would like a hard copy of that.
I never saw that, Ivan, I'd like one.
This was mailed to every household in Goffstown,
That's
every
the one we saw
voter.
last year.
It was last year. And in the upper left, it shows the cost per pupil. Now, there's a lot of information in there. It shows the cost per student. It shows the cost per student versus the state average. And there's a difference, and the difference is getting greater, or can be said a number of ways. The Goffstown non-education costs are increasing less than the state. You can get into discussion about what is the non-education costs. And that lower ascending line, based on the SAU number, is increasing at 7% a year on average. So the cost is doubling every 10 years. The other thing that shows up, at least on this piece of paper, which is interesting, there's a tax chart on the right. There's all the tax data for the school, and there seems to be no trend in anything. Our taxes are up, or they're down, or they haven't gone up, so you could conclude, looking at, there's no relationship between taxes and increasing costs in the school.
Go right ahead.
Can I just jump in, because I was actually at this meeting, and somehow my comments didn't make it in here. But yeah, there was, I mean, Frank McBride clearly stated that there's been big changes in revenue, which has had a huge impact on budgets, obviously, and, well, not budgets, but on our taxes. So that, to just talk about how costs have gone up and doubled, it's absolutely true, but it's only half of the picture. The other thing, and I'm sorry I missed this and came in late, there was a clarification, the 100,000 for the books that was removed, that was the math curriculum. I don't know if that was already
No, I
stated.
didn't discuss that.
Yeah, that's what the 100,000, it was, I think it's 120,000, was the new math curriculum that they did not implement because they didn't have the funds.
I got a question. You guys just confused me. Okay, we're talking, you bringing in state revenues, which directly affects the tax rate, I understand, but doesn't affect the cost per pupil. Would that be
Right.
accurate?
Right.
So Ivan's point that went up, doubled in 10 years is,
Perfectly valid.
okay.
Perfectly valid. But as he pointed out, it doesn't necessarily mean that our school taxes have doubled in that time.
That's right. Then the revenues come, it's the same thing with the town. I mean, you could go with their amount of spending and doesn't necessarily correlate with tax increase.
Right.
At the local level.
Right. Anything else, Ivan?
No.
Any more questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the reports.
Sure, thank you.
Board of Selectmen report.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, there's been no discussion at the board level concerning budget activity that will, we're going into that season, but there's been nothing recently discussed on budget activity. I appreciate your presence at the all boards meeting 2 Mondays ago. It was a good turnout of all our committee chairs, committees, councils, commissions, chairman. And the discussion at that all boards was primarily on budget formulation and communications to the residents.
In between departments too, I think was also.
And sharing among the, thank you, sharing among the departments some of their recent activities and concerns.
Any questions on that? We'll move on to the police department. Brian or Lee, did you guys have a chance to speak to the chief?
No, I didn't.
Okey-doke. Guy's not here. I didn't do the fire department. I spoke to the school side, well, and I'll talk about that when we get there. Public Works?
Yes, I had sent around an email following up on some questions about the new radio system for the DPW vehicles. And I also forwarded the emails to Joanne so she can pop them in the minutes electronically, save herself some writing. So I spoke with Carl Quorum on May 21st to get some further clarifications. I'll just quickly summarize my comments here. First, there have been, his proposal was to fund half of the new radio, cost of the new radio system by using money that had not been spent on overtime for plowing in the winter and salt because of the mild winter. So people asked about how the winter salt budget works. It turns out they don't prepay for salt. Instead, they get bids from vendors that set the price per ton that they're gonna have to pay for salt, which is then delivered and paid for on an as-needed basis through the winter. They use a lagging 5-year average to estimate how much they're gonna need. So their salt shed is currently full, so they can't buy cheap salt now in the summer and store it. I mean, they just can't do that at the moment, anyway, with that money. Second, on the communications equipment itself, DPW uses the same communication system as, and radios as fire and police, as was mentioned here last time. They've got about 40 vehicles that need radios. Fire and police had been planning changes in this area for some time. What DPW did not realize until this year is that the changes being implemented by the police and fire departments are going to mean that the radios and the frequencies currently used by the DPW vehicles will not work on the old system, nor will they work on the new system. So they have to buy all new radios. And there's also going to be a new transmission system, no longer one main transmitter on the mountain, but several lower power transmitters and repeaters placed throughout the town. So the cost is in flux. It's going to range from $92,000 to $103,000. They've applied for a FEMA grant that requires 50% local matching, so a maximum cost to the town would be $57,000 or so. And Carl was apologetic about this. He admitted that this caught him off guard. He's not an expert on this stuff. He really relies on, especially the fire chief, who is an expert in this area. And he's been, just basically responding to changes initiated by fire and police. Now, there was an email, Brian, you had asked about the cell phones. Why can't they just issue cell phones to DPW employees and let them communicate that way? And Carl responded just to me and Brian and Scott Gross, so other people didn't get this. But he admitted that they hadn't looked at this option. They do have cell phones for a few key employees of DPW, but only a few. And he did a quick run through of the estimated costs, even at a minimal plan, at $40 per month, and some money budgeting to replace damaged or out-of-date cell phones. He's estimating it would cost $15,000 per year. The radio system should last 10 to 15 years, so over the long haul, he estimates the new radio system is still going to be cheaper than relying on cell phones. So I'll just stop there and make a somewhat longer story short. Are there any questions?
Go right ahead.
Yes. Many of the calls on the radio are meant to reach multiple vehicles at one time, which is awkward on a cell phone.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, Carl didn't make that point, but that makes sense, right? Yeah.
Because they want a lot of drivers to know something about a road activity and being prepared for the next task at hand. And that's multiple communications. And it takes time to sit, contact 5 different people on a cell phone
Yes,
if
good.
that was your means of communications.
Good.
Radios are useful in that regard.
Right, good point.
And is broadcasting all the time. Driver doesn't have to do anything, rather than,
He just hears it, yeah.
if he's driving, he's got to answer the phone while he's driving? No.
Yeah.
It's being broadcast, and you can imagine the minutes of airtime if one's cell phone was on all day long, just for the sake of hearing someone talk for 40 different vehicles. So,
I don't know if this is relevant, but in an earlier conversation I'd had with Carl, he also mentioned that there are FCC and I guess FEMA regulations now that require coordination across jurisdictions. So the idea is if there's a disaster in Goffstown, say, and DPW crews have to come in from Portsmouth or Concord or even Massachusetts, they want compatible systems so that, and I don't know how that would work with cell phones, but the whole radio system is designed to comply with all those regulations also. So.
How did this miss the selectmen? How did this miss being done? I mean,
what missed?
the radios. How was this missed last year?
It was mentioned that the Director of Public Works did not make the connection that the changes in the fire station and police would have affected him. But it did. And he apologized. We're moving on.
I understand that statement, and we're moving on. When the fire department changed their, when the police department changed their system probably 10 years ago, you weren't involved then, but when they changed the system 10 years ago, all of a sudden, the fire chief says, guess what, we can't communicate. So we had to upgrade the fire. So it would seem to me with that information from then, that somebody would have been on board and said, hey, wait a minute, before we do this, let's coordinate, communicate between departments of what we're doing. The police department and the highway department have always communicated, and they should have known that this was gonna happen. Taking the money out of a salt budget is not the way to go. The salt budget is not a slush fund, and that's how I feel it's being used right now. There was, if you go back in the records, the salt budget was always funded every year at $5,000, because what was happening was the DPW wouldn't spend all that money, and then they would take it and use it on something else. So it was always funded at $5,000. Selectman Wheeler stood here year after year and said, we can't do it this way, we can't do it this way. So after a while, I stood up and I said, okay, Mr. Wheeler, let's fund the salt budget the way it should be, but you promise you're not gonna use it as a slush fund. If you don't use it, it stays, goes back. You're not using it for that, because you can't, it's a moving fund all the time. So you gotta take a chance of not over budgeting, which is what obviously this year we did. So using the salt fund to pay for something else is not a good idea.
It wasn't, excuse me, it wasn't over budgeting. It was anticipating a correct amount for, at the time that budget was prepared. We found that the money wasn't gonna be needed for the line item as in the budget, and it was effectively used on a more important need as it arose. So, and it's not a slush fund. So I would not characterize it as that.
Well, if something's not used in that line, you take it. And you sit here and.
That's bottom line budgeting.
You're absolutely right. And that bottom line can change on things like that. When you come and start using those kind of funds for that, you have to take that into consideration. Maybe the salt line should be $5,000 again. How would that look? That wouldn't be right. But it's not right to take that money from a line that you say you need it for the town. It's important that the town maintain their roads and they need this money, and then when you don't spend it, you use it for something else. That's not right either. Sorry about that. Go right ahead.
So I'm a little confused on all the timing of all this. The police and fire have already made their switch to the new communication system? And so DPW is already basically cut off? I mean, are they functioning without communication right now, or?
They have communications right now. The antennas haven't been switched with it.
But when are they going to be? In other words, does this have to be done this year, or
Yes.
could it be done next year and budgeted for
Yes.
appropriate? It has to be done this year,
Yes.
okay.
Brian?
I don't even know who answers this, but is this or is this not a trunking system?
Sorry, can you explain that term to me?
It's just the type of radios is, like, they have different types of trunking systems for these radios, like, several construction companies around right now that I know of have these, and they have no idea why these radios in town would be off, while all their radios that they have that are very similar to the ones that are in these trucks, their antennas are still working, so
So somebody's using a compatible system, and you're wondering
exactly,
if
so
we.
but maybe there's something I don't understand, so that's why I'm
What is
asking.
the budgetary question in a design called trunking? You're into the design of a radio system, so what's the budgetary question? Is that more expensive or less expensive, a trunking system compared to something else?
I'm just trying to understand what kind of system we're on, I guess is what I'm asking you.
You're not gonna have the expertise.
It used to be trunk.
Okay, I'm just asking what it is, that's all.
It sounds like maybe they're still gonna probably be using their system, but it sounds like they're not gonna be able to communicate with the rest of them once this happens. I'm assuming that system is not actually going away, they're gonna be able to communicate amongst themselves. I'm just assuming, but.
I don't think that's true. I think that the system's gonna go away. They're gonna shut the tower down.
That's what everybody's telling me,
Yeah.
so that's why I'm asking
A
the question.
different tower,
Different tower, so.
different frequency.
And what Brian's saying is other companies are using the tower up there, and they're not being shut down.
I
So
mean,
it must be our system
and I guess that's what
being shut
I'm
down.
asking is because I had the same radios on my trucks for years, which identical to what they have sitting in their truck, so I'm just confused by it, cause there's several other companies that I know that are using the same radios I did that they have, that are gonna continue to use them, so I'm just asking the question, that's all.
I think one of the problems was that they went to low band
Yeah,
back 16 years ago.
yeah.
And low band was a problem.
Mhm.
We had high band prior to that, which was a municipal frequency through the state of New Hampshire and given to Goffstown. And all departments were on the municipal system. And when they went to trunking, it was so that a cruiser could talk to a cruiser, or a fire truck could talk to a fire truck.
Yep.
Or you could switch to talk to Ware, or New Boston, or Manchester. However, Manchester was low band, and we were high band, so then they switched to low band, and then Manchester went high ultra frequencies. And it goes on and on.
I guess
There was
that's
no
what
sense to it,
I guess that's
right?
what I was
All
asking,
these
I was
technical
trying to understand.
terms, I don't know where it's leading to.
Well, so if I understand this though, from what I'm figuring out, I'm not a technical person, is basically we might be able to piggyback some kind of system to get us through the end of the year, but there's gonna be a cost and it might not be terribly efficient,
The system,
but it would allow us to, but it's kind of how much is it worth to you to have it budgeted on a separate line?
Well, I guess it comes down to the fact that, what did they do with the fire and the police? Did they go back to the high frequencies, or did they stay in the low frequencies?
I think
They
this is my
stayed on
third
low
time on
frequency.
front radio changes. How many times have we done this?
It's been going on for 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, every time you turn around, we're spending $100,000
Yeah.
on radios.
Well, but I
And
mean,
one
how
of
many
the
new cell
problems
phones
was,
have you gotten in that time?
when you first
I'm
spent,
about ready to get another one too.
we first spent, when John Scruton was here, and we first spent over $1 million, we were told by Motorola, which everything was Motorola in them
That's right,
days,
I remember this.
on the high band, not the, yeah, it was a high band frequency, that it wasn't gonna work, what we did on the mountain. And so they said, oh, they didn't wanna bid on it, and the only one that would bid on it was GE. And GE said they could do it, well, they hadn't done it,
I don't know.
and it's been ongoing ever since.
I don't know where a discussion about 16 years ago is leading. I mean,
It's
$1
very.
million,
Yeah.
16 years ago was gonna solve the problem.
The discussion is, we keep changing radios every few years, we got another thing, and now it's an emergency. This is a budgeted
Okay,
question.
this most recent upgrade in the police and fire solved a problem of coverage as well. There were places in the community that the radio frequencies weren't reaching, and the repeaters are solving that. Various antennas at different locations in town, picking up the signal and repeating it to cover the places weren't. We don't want a police cruiser in an area where he can't call for help.
We used to have that problem up in the back mountain, wasn't it, Dick? We never had any
Yeah,
reception in the back
But
mountain.
they put the repeaters up, and they were told that repeaters would solve the problem, I guess they did. And I didn't know that they were changing frequencies. If they don't change frequencies, I don't understand why they have a problem talking to all the vehicles like they used to.
Well,
If they got repeaters, it would seem to me it'd become simpler.
I don't see the point of this committee discussing the frequencies of the radios. What's the budgetary issue?
What, Joe has his hand.
yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Carl mentions that the last time they did a radio upgrade was in 1997, so the system they've got now has lasted 15 years.
DPW, right?
Yeah, well, he says "we," and I assume that means DPW, yeah.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, you don't think this is a budgetary thing, so I'll just spend $50,000. Budget committee has no questions, or $100,000. Budget committee shouldn't be having, questioning that, I can understand that. Go right ahead.
I just have one question. Does he have an estimate as to when he'll find out about that matching grant?
No, I didn't ask him that.
Brian?
Once,
And then, I guess my question off that was gonna be, when we get the grant, or if we do or don't get the grant, where do we go from there? Let's say we don't get the grant, where's the rest of the money coming from? Does anybody know, or?
the the plan presented to the selectmen is the purchasing of the radios with the assistance of the grant. We don't have a plan if that would not happen, so
I think the budgetary question is, and we don't have to talk about frequencies, is there any other alternatives that might be a lower cost? Have we searched out, have we done some research, or are we just jumping into the system that they said this is how much money it's gonna be and we gotta pay it? I think that's the question we're gonna have. We can have conversations about frequencies all night, but
Yeah, that's,
Well, some of us could, some of us could.
come on,
I'll just tune it out.
you're missing the good fun.
Is that a pun?
Any other, any other questions on that? We'll move on. The heck was that? Works. We got Parks and Rec? Brian?
Yeah, I don't have much to report. The big thing was, it's more towards next year's budgeting. Barnard Park, the track is in pretty bad disrepair, and they're looking to do at least a repair to it. So that cost could vary. And Rick's looking into seeing the best alternative. He's talking to Frank McBride, because the high school uses that track as well. And it all kind of depends also whether or not the school eventually gets their own track, but that's gonna be on the radar screen for next year. And everything else has been the same as we reported last.
And the big events this weekend, right?
What's that?
The big events this weekend, the Gallop?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And a free concert, by the way, at the high school, I believe, that
Yes,
Parks and Rec
Saturday
and
evening,
the Lions are putting on, correct?
sponsored jointly by the Park Department and Lions Club.
It's a free concert and ice cream social.
Well, concert is
Oh,
at the high
somebody told
school.
me there's gonna be ice cream.
Bring lawn chairs.
And Elizabeth's bringing ice cream.
Somebody told me there was gonna be free ice cream, but
That's later in the year.
oh, all right.
All in the details.
I thought that was all at the same time. I
I
saw
thought
the
it was
sign that says
too.
out there right
I
now,
thought
ice cream
so-
social.
I thought so too, but.
All right,
Oh, one other quick thing on Parks and Rec that.
go for it, I'm
I'll
sorry.
just- I'm sorry, I'll just pass on. The middle field, Rick and I talked about this, and I just know from other things, but that middle field at Surratt Field is in really bad shape, and they're reseeding it. He's doing some emergency measures to kind of bring it back. This is something that I think we're gonna see next year in the budgeting thing. That field's in such bad shape that they can't use it right now. And we already have a field crisis, like field shortage, so that's something else that's probably gonna be on the horizon, is something to bring that field back.
No idea what though.
I don't know what he's planning. I know he's put a lot of some new, he's like done some extra seating on it, and he's trying to keep people off of it. They're not using it for summer sports.
Is there irrigation there? No, I
There's
didn't
no
think so.
irrigation? I thought there were
Think so.
sprinklers. I think there's sprinklers at Surratt.
I don't
I
remember.
think there is.
All right, move on to Ruth.
I had a meeting with Sue, and the administration budgets are at expended 39.10%, so they're right on schedule. One thing that is in there is the GIS flyover, $110,000, which is going to have to be encumbered. Because by the time March rolls around and we have town meeting, the company that does this likes to, well, they have to, schedule it when there's no leaves on the trees and everything, so that they can see and be able to take pictures of the town. And it just, by the time we had town meeting, it just wasn't able to be done. So we're going to encumber it, and we will be one of their first ones next year to have it done in January, so that was the,
It's called aerial photography in the leaves off the tree.
Yeah.
So
and a sunny day in the winter.
it was only a period of like 10 days. Once we entered into the contract for the aerial photography, we had about a 10-day window before leaves started really blossoming out.
Yeah, and with the
And
weather the way it was, it just screwed it up.
When it was sunny, there was too much wind. The plane likes to fly on a straight line rather than crabbing along. And if the wind was good, it was cloudy. And we need the sunlight.
Very good. Go ahead, Ruth.
And the only other thing where there's a little bit of a problem, and it really isn't a problem, but it's just something that they're gonna have to work on, is that the HVAC units for the town hall, and maybe David can help me explain this. It's, they've got a problem now, I guess. And it was expected this would be done later in the year or something.
One side of this building is not heating or air conditioning.
Yeah.
Therefore, will be replaced.
And
We've asked, a public service has brought in at their nickel, has brought in a consultant to advise the town as the best type of replacement system.
and Sue said that that was just invaluable, being able for them to come and do that free of charge to the town.
And that, you said that money is budgeted?
Yes, yes, it's budgeted. But, another little problem with it is that part of it is to come from the Mildred Stark Fund. But you've got to watch that very carefully, because with the interest rates the way they are right now, that isn't making money like it used to, so.
Okay. What's the estimated cost on that? What was it budgeted? What was it budgeted for, I mean?
50,000.
50,000.
And other than that, everything else is rolling along.
Very good. Ivan? Anything new at CIP?
What, you skipped me.
I'm sorry, did I?
I know I talk a lot, but that
Oh,
doesn't
yeah, I'm
mean I-
sorry, library. I didn't want to miss the library.
Jeez.
Heck, I even printed out your,
Yeah, I sent a little thing around, hopefully
Yeah.
everybody got it. Joanne, did I send this to you?
did get it, I just didn't print it.
Okay,
very
that's
well.
fine, I
No,
just
for
wanted to
some
make sure.
reason, I didn't get anything this month.
Yeah, your email bounced, which is
It
weird, because
did.
I have you in my system.
Okay.
you gotta pay the bill.
Something happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
I'll send it again, Ruth.
Okay.
Just briefly, they're tracking, I don't have the exact percentage, but they're tracking pretty much, they're a little under budget at this point, but summer is their big season, so that's gonna even out. Briefly, so we don't go over all this, usership continues to rise. It's been rising for the last several years. It's still going up. In the staffing department, most people know, Head of Children's Services, Mrs. Marsha, retired. They've hired new staff, and they're training them, and there's gonna be a 1-month overlap. So there's gonna be 1 month where their staffing costs are a little up, while the old people train the new people before they leave. They've also taken a full-time position at the circulation desk, divided it into 2 part-time positions, which gives them greater flexibility. And will also be cheaper because they don't pay benefits at that. They don't pay very many benefits. Wasn't that what it was, Ivan? Do they pay none at 20%? Or at 50%? Right, it's higher before they start getting any benefits. They have the building repairs, they have 2 chimneys. They unexpectedly discovered that there are problems with both of them. They need to be redone. They've got a bunch of estimates, and the trustees settled on this one for $6,800. They're going to that's going to come from their current budget. I'm not sure which line exactly, because their maintenance line is already almost spent for the year. So I don't know exactly which line she's planning Diane's planning to take that from, but she is. For next year, 2 things to keep our eyes on. E-content, that is the biggest area of demand right now. Everybody wants to rent e-content. The problem is as I explained here, it's very hard for libraries to buy e-content. And when they can buy it, it's usually at triple the price. I did ask if people could buy it. I'm like, well, I'll buy some books and then, somehow donate them to the library. No, they can't. Licensing agreements prevents the libraries from even accepting e-content. So this is a big problem. They're working with some various consortiums and groups in conjunction with other libraries to negotiate with publishers and try and get prices down, because this is what people want. GMILKs, I kind of explained here what the system was, but basically this is the other thing. There were some questions about this last year at budgeting time. Expenses for GMILKs have gone up. They are going to continue to be in flux. GMILKs, just so people know briefly, is kind of like interlibrary loan. So if you want a book and we don't have it, but Hooksett has it, you use GMILKs to order it, and it gets sent in a van over to our library. We are the smallest collection. We have the smallest physical book collection, and we are the biggest user, I think she said, or one of the biggest users of it. So it's very, very popular. Problem is, the state van used to let us put the GMILK's books on the state van, and now the state library has said, no, they've almost completely eliminated it. So GMILK's has to pay for vans, to contract somebody to do a private van service to transport the books. So they're working on the price for that, but we should expect that line to be fluctuating. Well, by the time it gets to us, it'll be a number, but it's going to be different than last year's. That's it.
Any questions? Now we'll move on to Ivan.
Yeah. Oh, CIP?
CIP, Ivan. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, there's another meeting, we'll do the fourth draft Thursday night, and the numbers continue to roll on. I mean, there's going to be a lot of proposals coming. I don't know what to say about it. A few million here, a few million there. That's all? Yeah, I mean, the school will be looking at a large capital improvement program, a large expenditure, and we're still in the middle of the process. I mean, the various departments are coming and making their presentation, so we literally haven't started to move the numbers around. And in the capital improvement program, just generalizing, is not a budget function. They just move numbers around. And Tim Redmond, who's head of DPW and Ware, is the head of capital improvement program. He's also the head of the planning committee, which will look at this data. So the capital improvement recommendations shifting will go to the planning, who will do what they do, and then it'll go to the Board of Selectmen. But the numbers literally are just, well, we'll do it next year rather than this year, and so forth and so on. So the numbers go from next year out to 2018, and for instance, the library is looking at a $4 million addition in 2016. So the CIP might move that out to 2017, or not. And we haven't got to that point yet, so there's really nothing concrete to talk about, other than it's ongoing, and one committee moving numbers around, giving it to another committee.
I would like to characterize it just slightly different.
Okay.
It's prioritizing the equipment or the infrastructure that has to be purchased, and ensuring that the highest priority infrastructure is being bought in any particular year. And the second goal is to make the resulting expenditures over 6 years as even as possible.
Yeah,
So
well stated, very well stated.
both
Thank
of
you.
those together results in
Yes.
moving money. But
Yes.
it's-
They're prioritized.
They don't, the CIP does not question the amount of a particular purchase. It's just the need given a priority.
Exactly, and these requests are prioritized as 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 being critical, it's a replacement needed immediately, and 4 being sort of on a wish list. So yes, the importance is part of the decision to move it out or not. Very well stated.
Where can we get a copy of that document? Is it online somewhere?
Is it online? Yes.
I don't know.
I don't know if it does you any good until they get done with it
I mean,
anyway.
just to see, I mean, that's
Yeah.
interesting about the,
Once they
I'm not gonna look at it
finish,
right now, but I
once
mean-
they finish in the fall, there's a binder that's, I think it's up in Brian Rose's office, of all the CIP proposals, and you can look through not only what the CIP decided and how they did the matrix, but also you can look at what each department had submitted, because they have to, don't they have to do a written proposal
Yes.
for
Yes.
each item? So you can look at all the information and the data they send on every proposal, And that's public.
I just think
The
the
binder.
overview is.
But we got a copy of that as a budget committee.
I don't think we
in
did
past
last
years.
year.
I didn't see this last year.
I
We got
have
it.
that binder, those are already, that has been presented, so when we make the assessment of does something get shifted or not, we look at the request and individual members will go visit the DPW, fire police, to make an assessment. So there is a binder about that thick, yes.
Now, could CIP change or modify any of the requests?
Say that again, please.
Should CIP modify or change any of the requests, or is it simply up or down?
Up
Or
or
not even
down.
up or down, it's simply when?
It's balancing the needs that are all competitive in any one year.
Okay.
It's, you know, is a particular truck, if DPW has 4 different trucks of different types of trucks they need to buy, and they put a need against each one of those vehicles, and compare it also on a scale, 1 to 4, and compare that same scale with something that needs to be purchased by another department.
But can I, just for example, and this is a totally fabricated example, I know that fire department has been purchasing trucks that serve more than one purpose. They've been taking out of service 2 old
2,
trucks
like
and
they
buying
did.
1 combined truck.
Yes.
What, could CIP look at that and say, gee, I really don't think you guys should combine that truck, I think you should be looking at 2 different trucks? And that's totally made up, I don't want anybody to like start a rumor mill or anything.
I can't believe you want more fire trucks.
No, but I mean, do you see what I mean?
Well, she's talking about something that was done last year. But the infrastructure item that's being requested is proposed by the department. And that's a given. The CIP is simply rating that or putting that on a priority scale.
Okay.
They're not redesigning the type of truck that's going to be purchased.
Okay.
Just like they're not saying, well, that truck should be $10,000 less.
Okay.
They're not looking at the cost of the item, or changing the cost of the item. They're accepting what the department head has proposed for the cost of the item.
So where would that discussion be held?
One second now. I think that there's maybe some misinformation that we just received. I served on CIP also, and we did do cuts on CIP. It may not have been 10,000 for a fire truck, but I remember the 10-wheel dump truck. There was a big argument whether that we needed a 10-wheel dump truck or we could have done a 6-wheel dump truck, which was less money. There was changing an engine. They wanted, the CIP, there was to put a new motor in a fire truck. And we said, well, wait a minute, why don't you just rebuild this motor? So, do they eliminate something? Sometimes. Do they, like a cruiser? The chief may want 4 cruisers, and CIP says, no, I don't think, we don't need 4 cruisers, or we can't afford 4 cruisers in this budget, so we'll push one out. That thing happens. That does happen. It's not just a rubber stamp where they come in and say, okay, this is an A, yep, or this is a B, yep. They move things around and they do change.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry if I,
In the past, I mean, the chairman has been really clear that the CIP is not a budgetary function, period. He's been quite,
well, that's that chairman, and whoever sits there and accepts it, you know. I guess you'd
I'm
have.
only saying what is so according to him now, because I've asked the question, the answer is no.
That's been the argument with CIP for many, many years, and it's never been like that in the past.
It's never been a budgetary item, but it is a plan that, based on the requests, the committee decides whether it's needed. So if they feel it's not needed, they could eliminate
They're
it.
putting a priority on the
Joanne
need.
served as chairman of the CIP, right? So she's been in the seat also, so.
Thank you, Joanne.
But then those discussions are also happening with the selectmen, I assume.
I was just gonna
Yes, it
bring up,
does.
there was a discussion, well, you were at the all boards meeting, and one of the things at the all boards meeting we discussed was CIP. And I brought up the point that, you know, when there's a budget issue, that's the first place the selectmen go also, is they go to CIP and start moving stuff around. So CIP, when they get done with it, it goes to the Board of Selectmen, they have,
It goes
there's-
to planning.
The planning, which just pretty much rubber stamps it anyway. I don't think I've ever seen a change in it. And then from there, it goes to the
Selectmen.
selectmen, they'll make changes, and then it comes to the budget committee, and you'll have a shot at it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes to deliberative, and they'll have a shot at it.
Well, it's part of the general
It's part of the.
operating at
yeah,
that point.
it's not deliberative. But you never got a copy of that in the past?
If I did, I don't recall.
We got
I mean-
we
I don't
got
think
a
we got one last
simplified
year, but I
version
know
of that
in the
last
prior
year.
years
Oh,
we
what?
have.
We got a simplified version. Wasn't there a simplified version, or did you make a simplified version for us? We didn't get that whole thing, but I think we got a simplified version of it. Is what I remember.
I mean, we do eventually see, if, I don't know who just said that, but we do eventually see these things, but I think it's nice to see, you know, this,
The request and what's happened.
yeah.
It also gives you a feeling of what's gonna happen in the out years. If you're here for 3 years, you get a chance to see,
Well, right,
oh, this
so
is
it
what they're
helps you
looking
make
for next
dec-
year and the
It helps
following
you
year.
make decisions today, knowing what's coming down the pike tomorrow.
Exactly.
And
think.
every one of those items has a packet of
Right.
paper that goes with it, so the total binder
I
is
wouldn't want that, I would
about
just
3
want
inches thick.
this.
Lisa, that document you're looking at, that's generally available
Can you do it
to
online?
the appropriate people. The planning board, the budget committee, the selectmen,
Yeah.
as the time is appropriate for the documents to be reviewed.
Okay.
Any other questions on CIP? We'll move on to the school. School board updates.
School board met last night. It was our last meeting until August 27th, so we're on break for the summer. We're on target. Any known expenses that we have been encumbered. As of now, my latest data is we're looking to return about 400,000 in unreserved funds back to the general fund.
Excellent. Anybody have any questions on that? We'll move on to Lee. Did you have a chance to get a hold of anybody at Glen Lake?
I got the reports, I can't pull them up on my computer right now, but, I did talk to them and, Ray Labor over at the SAU, and I guess everything is where it should be, and by the end of next month, they still got some things coming through and whatnot, but, they're gonna be right on target where they should be,
Okay.
or where they budgeted.
Okay. I did speak to Bartlett. It was more or less just an introductory type meeting. We discussed what we were gonna be looking at doing over the summer. Would like to take a tour of the facility over there, and I told them before I would commit to that, I would check with other members who might wanna go and take a walk around. Probably best we do it in the summertime when there's not a lot of kids running around, and we get a good chance to peek and see what's going on. So if there's some of you that wanna go, just let me know, and then we'll try to set up a date. Maybe even a Saturday morning if possible, I'm not sure, but, you know, what schedules, or even in the evening, maybe we can get him to meet us over there one evening. So that's, and I explained to him that what my job was as a budget committee chairman was to review this year's expenditures in process of working on his budget with him for next year, reviewing the budget. So he and I seem to get along well, and hopefully we'll get to work together. Maple Ave?
That's me. In all due respect to your meeting over the summer, I really think to get the full effect of Bartlett, or Maple Ave, you need to go when the kids are there, because you need to see how tight it is. I mean, you'll get an idea of the classrooms, maybe the desks might be pulled out because they're stripping floor or whatever, but I had Bartlett last year, and I went when school's in full session, and it's tight.
I was thinking of the infrastructure. I understand there's infrastructure issues over there too, isn't
You'll
there?
see that too, yeah,
Well,
but I mean,
that's-
you'll
I
get the
want-
full effect when the
The
game's
kids are
all
there.
there. That's my 2 cents.
You got it.
Maple Ave, I did call Suzanne, last day of school is tomorrow. She had nothing to report budgetary wise, everything, what Lee said and Diane said, ditto.
Ditto, huh? Mountain View?
I have nothing to
I'm
report.
sorry, go ahead.
Just, Mr. Chairman, a quickie. You go to the town website, goffstown.com, and the capital improvement program, this is there. It's there for last year. I presume when we finish, it'll be available there also. So this complete document is available on the town website, as are all the other committee
Good.
reports.
Thank you. Nothing? High school, we pretty much did that, right, Ivan? Did you have anything else to add? You did your report, you were there. Dick, anything new at the water precinct?
Not really, the budget's in good shape. We're gonna start the water main on Elm Street on the, I believe it's the 9th of July. Be 3 weeks to do it. We did send a contract to the DES to have them review RFP from a company that will do the surveying of our dams and the effect downstream if something were to happen with them.
Pretty much it, huh?
Pardon?
That's pretty much it?
Yep.
Brian, you have a question? You have something? No? Okay, then we have that. New business, Phil wanted to get a kind of an idea of what suggestions we wanted to put onto the governing bodies and what we were looking for is for budget numbers or any targets, or David's already got his hand up, I haven't finished yet.
I missed, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I'm slow on picking up on what Rich just said.
Oh, I'm sorry, go right ahead.
He's talking about the DES at the state has asked the water precinct as owner of a dam, Mountain Trees.
3 dams, right.
3, to have a survey done because of some unsatisfactory features on those dams. Well, the state has also asked the town to do a survey on Mountain Base Pond.
Well, I think it's.
And the point I want to bring up is we've already released our RFP for hiring a consultant to do the study. We've got 19 responses.
You got what?
19. And it's RFQ. It's a qualifications-based request. But we were surprised by the number of firms eager to be
4.
involved.
We
Yeah.
had 4.
But it's, you know, we're now facing reviewing half-inch documents from 19 different firms to select the best qualified firm.
Was it a class of dam that they were looking at? Is that what it was?
This is a dam that is next to Mountain Base Road. To me, it has holds back 2 or 3 feet of water.
Up at Mountain Place Pond, right? I mean, it's been there forever.
Yes,
I've.
yes, but there's faults with that from DES perspective, and we have to do a proper survey to know what technical corrections have to be done.
Are you both doing the study?
Different
We-
dams. They own
there's-
dams and they own
There's-
dams.
There's
It all
two,
starts at the same
there's
pond.
2 dams on that
Huh?
pond. One facing the reservoirs that
Yeah,
Dick
we
is
have the-
interested in.
We have the upper and the lower reservoir.
One I'm talking about feeds into, I believe it's called Dan Little Brook, and it flows down into Glen Lake.
Elizabeth, did you have your hand up for them?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
So it's just, we're both marching towards the same direction of getting assessments of the, what has to be done.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now, going back to the new business of suggestions to the governing boards in preparation of their next budget. Are we throwing anything out there? Any ideas? Ivan, you want to start with an idea? No?
Why-
Okay,
why
we'll move
me?
on.
You're brave. I would just make a suggestion. In the past, we did ask the town and the school to take a look at 3 options with a 10% reduction, no reduction, and a 10% gain. So to present 3 scenarios, which the town did, the school did not. So I would certainly make a motion that we,
I don't think we're I'm not, I don't
if
know
you're not
we-
at that point yet.
Yeah, I don't know if we're at that point where we want to take motions. I think it's let's hear everybody's ideas.
I'm just sharing what we did last year.
Okay, thank you. Joe, any ideas of what you'd like to do, like to see?
I'm not sure, honestly. I mean, you know, it seems reasonable to take things like the inflation rate and population growth into account, and budgeting within those constraints seems like a reasonable target. I don't know what else to say.
Okay, that's fine. Lisa?
I don't think we did that last year. That was 2 years ago.
2
that we
years
did it,
ago.
Yeah. I guess my only comment would be, I mean, I think it's sound to take the budgets, to look over the budgets, to ask questions about the budgets, to see where we as a committee think money can be spent maybe more judiciously, more wisely, make adjustments, and create our budget. I like to see what the departments want. I like to get the full picture of what they're asking. I like to ask questions. I like to hear everybody else's questions. So to say, that would be my suggestion.
Richard?
Oh, I kinda look at it that probably we should tie it into whatever the Northeast Index indicates the rise in costs.
What does the state look at when they do their budget?
Whatever gets proposed, I suppose.
Okay, I'm just curious what your answer was gonna be.
Oh, that's I was never involved in the budget in the state, other than the final votes on coming out of the committees. I guess you know where it was this year,
Yeah.
you know. One of the, I think that one of the drivers of our budgets is what's gonna happen with the state educational funding. You know, we get so much money every year, and we've been, on a pretty good end of it. Is it gonna change? They didn't vote in targeted aid, but what's gonna happen?
All right.
That's a big issue, you know.
Targeted aid?
We're geared to a certain amount. If that changes by a tremendous amount, you're gonna have to see a bigger increase.
Elizabeth?
I object to specifying any specific number. I pretty much agree with Lisa. I think it's obvious that we all want good services for as cheaply as possible.
Not cheap.
All right, as inexpensively
There you go.
as possible. That seems obvious to me, and I don't think anybody needs to hear us say it. This
Brian?
committee.
I agree with Elizabeth, basically. I mean, but I think everyone should be keeping the economy in mind and, the tax rate in mind and basically using common sense. And I think we did a good job last year going line by line and, kind of dissecting what they had to offer. But the voters spoke and they want us to be frugal. And so I think that should be one of our focuses in the town and school.
Okay. Lee? I'm sorry.
Did you do that on purpose?
Yeah, more or less.
So is that you don't want to hear from me?
No, go right ahead, I'm sorry.
I was ready to answer.
All right.
I just looked up and saw Lee sitting there, and I just,
You could tell the smoke was coming.
yeah, I can see.
I likewise don't think that we should be giving the governing bodies targeted numbers, that we would ask for responsible budgeting based on what their needs are, but with an eye towards the economy and the taxes.
Good answer, sorry about that. Go ahead, Lee.
It's all good.
Pretty much the same
Ditto.
as everybody else. Yeah, it's nobody. We all would like to say this is where we want to be, but any business we're going to go back and look at what's our cost of fuel, what's our insurance going to cost this year, and those are your costs. You got to look at that stuff. So it doesn't just to set a number and have nothing behind it. Doesn't make any sense.
Ryan?
Yeah, pretty much. Exact same thing. I mean, you can't tell people to cut things when you don't know where things are going, fuel, everything. I mean, everything's changing. So I would say let's look at it first before we start making big decisions.
Do you want to throw any 2 cents in, or? I know where the selectmen are already talking, as we heard in our meeting.
I agree with several of these positions. Through the last couple of years, as I've been with oversight of our department heads in the town, I've been very impressed with the talent that they have to do their jobs, and the skill and the foresight of knowing what infrastructure and purchases would best and most efficiently serve this town. And we pay them to do the best that they can for the town. And we owe it to the department heads so they can bring their first line assessment to the various committees and the selectmen. And then if we consider many other factors beyond what they're trying to fulfill as their responsibility. And we may have to whittle them back. But it serves, we need to listen to what they feel is best for the town. And then we take other factors into consideration.
Thank you. Ruth?
I agree, and like David said, they have to listen, and I think we have to listen too, and I do think that in any given year, priorities are gonna change amongst departments, so that it's not gonna be a cut and dried thing. So we have to go with the flow.
Anybody that was at the meeting 2 weeks ago, who was, just you and I, right? Yeah.
I'd love to hear a recap at some point, not right now, but I mean, I don't know.
Well,
if they're
I could
meeting-
tell you, it was a discussion about CIP and a discussion about budgeting. Solid waste was there with pay for throw, pay for throwing trash out. They gave a little demo on what they're thinking, and they took some questions to go back and get answers to, so when they do come forward with it, they'll have the answers. I thought it interesting that Selectman Gross had said that, there's nothing sacred right now when they're looking at their budgeting, because they realize what happened this last budgeting season, and I'm sure the school's gonna look at the same thing and realize what happened there, that the sentiment out there is not to spend a lot of money right now, and I think when it comes to my opinion on the message we should send, I think they gave us the message, at least that's what I took at that meeting, that the town side anyway, was seriously gonna look at what's going on, and cuts if necessary. I mean, they were, Scott specifically said that, personnel cuts may have to happen. They don't want to, it may be just attrition, but they're gonna do what they gotta do. Because there's a certain amount of services that have gotta be done, that have gotta be paid for. Would that be pretty much the message that
Thank you.
the board was putting out?
Thank you, Peter.
I certainly got the impression that the department heads understood that message as well,
Exactly.
by the comments that they made during the evening. And he left out the best part, it was held in the beautifully new restored Grassmere Town Hall.
Yep.
Which has amazing acoustics,
I
apparently.
heard a lot of compliments too.
Oh, good.
Any questions? I think then our sentiments, if I got it right, is to go back to the school board and to the Board of Selectmen, that we're looking to be frugal, and we're hoping they're gonna be frugal. But they gotta use their best judgment,
Yep.
what the town needs. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
An item that was brought out at the all boards meeting is the selectmen had approved our town for participating in the Concord Co-op, which was a partnership of 30, more or less, communities bringing their recycling waste to a brand-new facility that would be built in Concord. The board of directors of that activity, about a month ago, decided to stop their going forward and not build the facility. And it was based on the town of Concord. Is Concord a town or a city?
City of Concord.
City. Concord decided to pull out of the agreement. They owned 30% of the vote, and they got several smaller towns which were wavering anyways to go along with them, and therefore the contract collapsed. Our Director of Public Works has reached out to the community public works directors of those 30 communities and say, let's get together and see what we can do to put the pieces of the puzzle back together again. Because essentially you've got land that has already been zoned, approved for the construction. You've got money that's been approved for the construction. You have a building that has been designed architecturally, ready to go. But now we've lost the board of directors who would approve everything moving forward. And he's trying to take the initiative to put it back together.
And there was some talk that
It was
Goffstown could-
important. It was important for this town because the hauling of our solid waste, rather than to a community near Boston, just a few miles up the road to a facility in Concord, would drastically save our turnaround town labor and truck usage. And potentially give a better rate.
And there was also talk about possibly relocating it into the Goffstown area too. That discussion was had.
That was one of the off-the-cuff remarks, that perhaps there's land in Gulfstown that could be suitable for a recycling, a major recycling center. But,
That's true, yep. Anything else?
What was their reason for dropping it?
It had to deal with funding, but I suspect there were other reasons that Concord wasn't happy with what was being proposed, and I don't have that information.
Carl Quorum's background, as you know, Dick, was in solid waste. When he came out of Dover, he was running the solid waste department up there. So he is, you know, he still has all those connections. Any other questions, comments? Discussion on the summer hiatus. Normally, we don't have any meetings in July or August. All in favor of that? Aye. You abstaining, or you're not voting, or what? Unanimous. Yeah. So our next meeting will be Tuesday, September 18th, 7 PM. Anything?
Question, I'm sorry.
Go right ahead, Elizabeth. No.
Did we ever make a decision, I missed the last meeting, but was there ever a decision made about how we're proceeding in the fall? Are we doing one big meeting with the selectmen? Are we piggybacking on the department head presentations to the selectmen? What, 'cause, I mean, I know by September 18th, the department heads will either be making their presentations or have just made them. I kinda wanna know, so I don't show up here on the 18th and they say, guess what, you're in meetings for the next 5
Yeah.
nights.
Have you set schedules up with the department heads?
We have not set schedules up for the department heads to brief their budget to the selectmen.
Okay. But did the budget committee ever decide how we wanted to do this?
Nope, not that I know of. Nobody's,
I thought we said we would go back to the way we did it 3 years ago, maybe,
How was
where,
that?
when the department had submitted to the selectmen, that we would be there if we wanted to be.
Have joint meetings on those nights,
Yeah,
basically, is that how they
instead
do
of
it?
having that one big meeting like we did.
So that would mean we'd have to have a little bit of advance notice, because it might be in the middle of September, we're going every Monday night to selectmen's meetings. Correct?
Or watching
Yeah.
the rebroadcast.
Well, if it's a joint meeting,
yeah.
Can't
we're
ask
supposed to be, we
questions,
can't
that's the
ask
whole point.
questions,
Well,
yeah.
Elizabeth, those are the two options for this committee. Do you want to participate with the selectmen in 4 to 5 sessions? Maybe 4. Or do you want everything after it's presented to selectmen, then the department heads and the selectmen come back to this committee for an all-day event.
Well, I mean, I don't have any strong preferences personally, I just kind of want to know
Those are the two
what I'm doing in the
mechanisms that's
fall.
been recently used.
Okay,
I can give you an example of what we've done way back, well, 6, 7 years ago, is we used to have, once the selectmen did the budget, they came to the budget committee, and then, we had the department heads more or less go over it with us, and then, discussed it with them. So you got some, one-on-one type stuff. But you were working with a budget, or a proposed budget that had already been gone through by the Board of Selectmen. So that was one way.
okay, so that's a third option.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people weren't happy last year with the all-day Saturday things, and that people didn't think they were productive on the budget committee. So, I mean, go ahead.
Well,
I thought they were-
maybe a variation on the theme then. If you were to observe and participate with the selectmen's receiving information from the department heads, you would have a better idea on the scope of all their budgetary activities. You could then generate questions and say, Mr. Department Head, when the department head comes to this committee, you could then have 5 or 6 or whatever, a number of questions already prepared. Because
isn't that what we-
at least, at that point, you're knowledgeable.
I
with-
thought that's what we did I mean, I heard, I was at the same meeting where people were expressing displeasure with that Saturday morning, but, I mean, that's what I did, I took notes, and so then when people came in, I mean, other people must have done that too, because I didn't ask a lot of questions last year, I mean, then the department heads would come in and we would ask our questions.
I think a lot of people felt that the real work was done when the department heads came in and met with us, and that Saturday.
Right, but the
morning
Saturday
thing
is
was
kind of a yeah, but that's kind of like the background information that you need in order to ask questions.
Well, but if
I'll
you
tell you
remember,
what-
we had to repeat, almost every question that got asked in that Saturday morning thing got repeated when the
Right, because
department
people
head.
weren't here on
Right.
Saturday. But if people aren't gonna show up on a Saturday morning, you think they're gonna go for 4 Mondays in a row? I highly doubt it.
My point is simply that by September 18th, that decision needs to be made about what this committee's doing before September 18th. Because we can't come back here September 18th and then try and figure it out, because by then, some of this is already gonna be in motion.
Well, it looks like you got tonight, because it doesn't look like we're meeting again before the 18th.
Well, and God knows I don't want that, but
When do you think that department heads will start submitting the budget to you, the selectmen?
There's been no discussion of setting those agenda items. And,
I don't know what you want to do, Elizabeth. If they don't even know when they're doing it, how are we supposed to know?
well, okay, then maybe the solution is that all of us need to, on our own recognizance, watch the selectmen's meetings when the department heads are presenting their budgets.
When they start to have the budget submitted, they would be notifying the budget committee.
Well, they didn't last year, if you remember, and
They
Sue
didn't, but I
could
don't think
easily
they
send
had
out
to,
an
did they?
email to all of us when the
I
schedule is
can-
set.
as
yeah.
chair, I can see that can happen.
Okay,
That when I do set the agendas for the presentations, this committee will be informed.
okay.
And then you can,
So have we decided then that that's the way we want to go, is by going to the Monday meetings?
Well, we can watch it, maybe we won't have joint meetings, it sounds like. That was my takeaway, that we wouldn't have joint meetings with the selectmen, we should just watch it to get information. But then we'd have the department heads come in and see us on our meetings and ask our own questions, and not do the Saturday thing.
Then, in order to really do that on TV and to follow it along on TV, you'd actually have to have a copy of what they're looking at.
Yeah, we could probably get that, couldn't we?
and that is now being done. The complete read-ahead packet, which is usually 50 to 150 pages long, that complete packet is available to residents on Friday evening before our meeting,
Online.
online.
Works for me.
So we're not gonna have a Saturday meeting?
Is that a motion?
No, I'm asking, and what about the school? I mean, we don't care about the school.
Well, it's the
We
same
have
thing.
to
deal with that.
I mean,
We
we
haven't
watched,
started
we
talking
watched the
about
principal's
budget schedules.
presentations, right? Because they come to the school board, we can watch, we can attend or watch it later on Peg on Demand or whatever. We can watch the principal's presentations, and then we do the same thing. It just, I mean, I didn't mind the Saturday things, but I found it very frustrating that half of our committee was not there. Because then it's like, what are we doing here? We gotta go over all this stuff again.
But I think,
So, I
and
mean,
I'm
we
not
either
trying
need
to
to
belabor
commit
this.
to one thing or the other.
Not trying to belabor it, but if people aren't gonna make that 3 to 4 hour commitment on a Saturday, I don't think they're gonna sit at home and diligently watch these meetings. I know I'm not. I mean, I don't have that kind of time to sit and watch all these meetings.
Well, there isn't any other way around it.
Well, there is, it's having a Saturday meeting, but whatever, I mean, I'll do what everyone agrees to.
Well, no, there's a third way. There's a third way of having them come in after they're done with after the selectmen are done with theirs and the school board's done with it, they come in and make the presentation to us. That principal, or for that school comes in, sits out here, right where you guys are sitting right now, and we go through it. Ask the questions.
That would be, I mean, we already have them in for a question and answer period anyways. We could ask them to make their presentations. Now, in the past that we've never, well, at least the year I've been on it, we did not speak directly to the principals.
They were on hand, like on that Saturday meeting when the superintendent presented the budget.
That's
The
true.
school side, we had principals there, not one of them was asked a question, but they were on hand. They were there in the event there was a question.
Okay.
This is what used to happen is superintendent, the principal. Then the superintendent would stay there, then the next one would come up. You know, that was one of the ways we did it. And, you know, I mean, that's
That makes more sense.
just another thought.
It does.
Mr. Chair.
Excuse me?
She said that makes sense, and I
I
said it
think it
does.
makes more, I mean, what do the new people think too? I mean,
Mr.
I'm
Chair,
sorry, go ahead.
I've already told you, I'll release to you the agenda of the department head presentations to the Board of Selectmen. If this committee has representatives in the audience, and especially the committee member who's represents that department, I mean, if they're present, they'll be invited up to the table, and will participate in the discussion. There's two or three spaces at the table, but if there's all 15 of you show up, well, but there'll still be an opportunity.
That's something that's an opportunity also, you know?
Okay.
So where do we want to go from here then? We're going to go with, we're going to be notified by, at least on the town side, we're going to be notified by the chair, and he'll update us as we go along. You have, Sue has all of our emails, or somebody does anyway. You can give it to, send it to Phil, and then Phil can send it to us.
I seem to recall that our department had presentations to the selectmen is well ahead of when the principals are briefing their budgets to the superintendent.
Trying to remember the timetable. I know the board's budget was ready to go to the budget committee. Was it the second or third week in November, which would have put our presentation somewhere
And
around
we're
October
already-
6th, maybe last year?
We're already well ahead of that.
It was somewhere like early October. It was either the first Monday or the third Monday in October, and memory's gonna tell me it was the first Monday.
So you could send us, whenever those dates get set, Diane, you could send us an email, right?
Yeah, they're not gonna be set until we meet. I mean,
That's
at
fine.
best, they're not gonna be met until September, because we don't meet until August. We won't have any budget
Right.
presentations yet.
That's fine.
So it will likely be at our September meeting here, or,
Diane, does that fit into, do you think the school board, the way we just said, having a superintendent and each principal from that school, and then, of course, we also have the SAU.
honestly, the superintendent's been on hand and the principals have been on hand for a presentation to the budget committee.
So it makes no difference if they're sitting up here.
So, I mean, obviously, I can't speak for them, but I certainly know history has shown that they have been willing to, come and be available for questions. I am certain that they would hope that it wouldn't be numerous times.
Well, that's the advantage of having everybody here to do it at a meeting like this, is, because, everybody's gonna have their questions, and Brian and I may have the same question, and it eliminates,
Repetition.
Yeah, well,
repetition,
yeah.
right? Just is, if it's done efficiently and effectively, I think that's best way to spend anybody's time.
And just to give a budget committee a heads up, what we used to do is, or at least what I used to do is, I used to go through the budget and highlight the areas I wanted to question on. This is just a normal thing. And, you know, and go from there. So do we want to proceed with that fashion with the school board? I mean, we gotta start giving some communication to those folks too, I imagine.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. That's my personal preference.
Okay, Diane, would you relay that to them?
I sure will.
David, we're all set with your plan, or our plan, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything else? Elizabeth?
I don't have anything else, but I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by who, Dick? All in favor? Thank you, folks. Have a good night.